Shadows of the silent orb began with a whisper in the hull of the ship Helios, not a voice, not a knock, just a thin vibration that ran along the metal skin and then stopped. Mara sat alone in the night watch chair outside her window. A dead white moon hung over a black ridge far below their survey orbit was slow and dull. Cold dust, old craters, radio silence. The status board stayed green until a new icon blinked on her screen. Unidentified object. Distance 10 meters, relative speed 0. She pulled up the hull camera. The stars on the monitor were clear and sharp, then they vanished inside a circle of total darkness a few arm lengths from the plates. No glow, no reflection, just an orb of night sharper than the space around it. She cut the audio feed from that section and listened. There should have been the faint hiss of solar wind on armor. Instead there was nothing, not even static. Her throat went dry. She called the captain. By the time he reached the bridge, the orb had drifted to the side of the ship as if pacing them. It stayed 10 meters away. No matter how Helios turned, they ran scans, thermal, grav, magnetic, radar. Every reading came back the same, 0, as if their beams passed through empty space. The captain wanted to fire thrusters and run. Helios was an old survey boat with old engines. Mara almost agreed. Then the orb glided out ahead and stopped directly over the black ridge on the moon below. It hung there like a dark star frozen over the rock. Sensors showed a faint tunnel of distorted readings between the ship and the ridge. Not strong, just wrong. Rana, the science officer, stared at the feed. This is a doorway, she said. Something links the orb and that ridge. If we leave it and it opens later, we will never know what came through. Command would want answers, so the captain chose to bring it aboard and study it under containment. Mara felt her stomach drop. A drone arm extended from the cargo bay. The orb did not resist as the arm moved around it. It simply floated in the center of an invisible cage. When the arm retracted, the orb came along as if space itself had become a handle inside cargo bay 2. They locked it inside a reinforced field and set the bay to acoustic isolation. They added extra sound bafflers without knowing why. It just felt necessary. Mara took first watch with Rana. In the glare of the overhead lights, the orb looked even darker. Every beam that should have touched it bent away or vanished. The only proof that it was real was the ache behind her eyes when she stared too long. Rana clapped her hands and listened. The clack of skin on skin echoed off the walls near the orb. The echo faded too soon, not cut off, shortened. They ran more tests, short radio bursts, sharp tones from speakers, laser pulses. The results were the same. The orb did not only swallow sound and energy, it bent each wave and delayed part of it. Some of the signal came back a heartbeat before it had been sent. Mara felt that before the numbers showed it. As she walked around the bay, she saw her own shadow lag behind by half a beat. Her foot went forward and the dark outline on the floor followed. Late her hand lifted. The shadow hand hesitated, then snapped into place. Soon every shadow in the bay showed that same delay. Tools on the wall, crates on the floor, their dark copies were all a breath behind. No one else was allowed inside. After that, the captain watched the recordings and ordered the orb jettisoned. Rana cited protocol. Once a foreign phenomenon came aboard, it had to be understood before disposal. If they threw it back into orbit, they might trigger something worse. On the third watch, the ship shuddered as the reactor changed modes. Lights dimmed for a few seconds. Backup strips cast long shapes across the deck. Mara was alone with the orb when the shadows stood up. Her own shadow peeled from her boots and rose at her side, flat yet somehow tall, like a sheet of darkness held upright. The shadows of the tool racks did the same. So did the long bar of gloom cast by the safety rail. They did not move toward her. They simply turned, a dozen flat heads tilting in her direction. There were no eyes and no mouths, yet she felt observed more strongly than she ever had. Something touched her mind, a pattern, not words, more like the shape of a song played backward. Images flashed, a sky of deep gray with no stars, endless plains of rock without detail. Their vibration itself was life, waves of pressure, folds of absence. Creatures like moving shadows flicked in and out of each pulse. Then a new thing tore through that layer. Engines, explosions, radio floods from a young loud civilization testing drives near a cluster of violent stars. Noise burned their world, noise tore gaps in their bodies. They fled the way they understood best. They wrapped themselves around a sphere of folded time and drifted out. The orb it had followed, weak traces of quiet through space, found the cold system beneath Helios, found the black ridge where an ancient impact had cracked the crust. There the stone rang slow and low like a deep bell, a perfect anchor. The shadows around Mara showed her one more future. Helios arriving, engines roaring, voices through hull metal. To them the ship was a knife of sound carving across their refuge. They would have to stop it, not from hate, from survival. They would borrow shadows, lean into them, slow every vibration, cool every surface. Soon nothing in the ship would move fast enough to hurt. The crew would freeze in painless stillness. The ship would drift as a quiet monument. Rescue craft would come. More ships, more shadows, star lanes smothered under a blanket of gentle death. Mara staggered under the weight of that vision. Her breaths came fast and felt thick in the corner of her sight. The orb deepened. Its center now looked like a shaft that fell forever. A question pushed into her thoughts. Can you live quieter? She thought of station markets ringing with voices, of engines thudding through hull plates, of music leaking from bunks in the off-shift. Silence had its place, but not as prison for all the sky. She gave her answer in motion. Mara ran for the engine room. Her path was oddly clear. Crew slumped half asleep at their stations. Every sound in the ship felt stretched. Klaxons moaned instead of blared. The fold from the orb was spreading through bulkheads at the drive core. She hit emergency controls. Manual jump. Destination, a patch of mapped emptiness far beyond settled routes. Not safe, just far. The captain and Rana arrived a moment later. Their voices dragged through molasses. She caught the meaning between slow syllables. You will tear the ship apart. We are not charged for jump. We will die. She pointed at the floor. Their shadows lagged a full second behind every movement now. If they waited any longer, even thought might freeze. She told them what the orb had shown, the gray layer, the pain of noise, the plan to quiet everything. Rana listened. Fear flickered across her face. Then steady. Do it, she said. The captain gave one sharp nod. Mara tied the orb into the jump solution. Every sensor that could see it agreed that wherever they went it had to go to, otherwise the fold would snap back and crush them all. Field coils screamed. The drive core flared white in her vision. For a heartbeat the entire universe seemed to tense. Then nothing. Then noise rushed back. Helios lurched out of the jump in one piece. More by luck than design. Hull plates buckled, systems flickered, but the crew were alive. Mara lay on the deck and stared at the nearest wall. Her shadow lay flat against her boots. When she lifted her hand the dark copy rose at the same time. Perfect match. They staggered to cargo bay 2 with a repair team. The containment field hung open. The center of the bay was empty. Only a faint ring of frost on the floor marked where the orb had floated. Outside the nearest viewport the stars were thin and faint. They had jumped beyond the dense lanes into a lonely stretch of intergalactic dark. No beacons, no stations, just distance. Mara stood there for a long time. She could not feel the shadows in her thoughts anymore, yet if she focused she sensed a tiny pressure out in the cold between galaxies. A silent orb drifting where almost no sound would ever reach it. Not quite death, not quite life, just exile. Sometimes at night she woke with the memory of that gray layer and folded silence. She would walk to a porthole and listen to the hum of the ship, to the chatter of crew in the hall, to the faint music leaking from a bunkroom. The universe stayed loud. Far away in the dark the silent orb floated and endured. Its shadows dreamed of stillness. Her kind dreamed of stars. Between those dreams there was a fragile peace. Shadows of the silent orb still brushed her life. Lights flickered when she stood. 2 quiet echoes came back just a little early, but Helios moved on. Engines rumbled. Voices rose and fell, and somewhere beyond maps a dark sphere listened, waiting in endless hush for the next noise great enough to wake it. You said, shadows of the silent orb. My topic is related to spaceship and aliens. Write this topic without headings, commas and etc. Duration 8 to 12 minutes. ChatGPT said, fine, here is a new complete story for your topic. No headings, no commas, no extra symbols, just pure narration written to run 8 to 12 minutes. When read aloud slowly. Shadows of the silent orb began on a night when the deep space freighter Arclight drifted past the edge of an uncharted sector. Most of the crew were asleep. Only Jalen sat awake in the observation cradle, staring at a thin ridge of broken rock on a nameless moon below. Nothing should have been strange about that moon. Dust crater fields, black stone that caught no sunlight, yet tonight something moved across it. The scanners caught a shape hanging above the ridge, not bright, not solid, just a round patch of perfect darkness that swallowed the stars around it. Jalen leaned close to the glass. At first, he thought the viewport had iced, but the darkness was outside, floating, watching. He activated long-range audio. Static should have echoed. Instead he heard nothing. Not dead silence, worse, a silence with weight, a silence that felt like it pushed against the inside of his skull. Arclight drifted closer on its automatic path. The dark sphere did not move. It waited, as if choosing who on the ship it wanted. Jalen called the captain. They ran full spectrum scans, thermal, magnetic, gravitational. Everything returned 0. The orb had no heat, no field, no mass. It should not exist, yet every trained instinct in Jalen told him it was alive. Without warning the ship lights flickered. The engines slowed. The air felt thicker. Even breathing sounded wrong, too soft, too slow. Voices on the intercom stretched like someone speaking underwater. The captain ordered Arclight to back away. The thrusters fired, But the ship did not move fast as if space around them had grown heavy and sticky. The orb drifted forward on its own, a slow glide, always the same distance away, always watching. When it reached the cargo wing, the hull temperature dropped to freezing. Frost crawled over the metal plates, not in random patches, in patterns, concentric circles, spreading outward from where the orb hovered. The science officer Rhea said only one thing: it is altering vibration, not matter, not energy. Vibration itself. Jalen did not understand until he tried to tap the rail. He hit metal. He saw his knuckles strike it, but the sound arrived a moment late, soft and faint like an echo from another room. Then he noticed his shadow. It lagged behind his steps by a heartbeat. When he lifted his arm, the shadow arm hesitated. It followed, but not at the same time. Cold surged through his chest. Rhea scanned the readings and whispered, "The shadows are becoming independent. If we let this continue, the orb will peel every shadow from every object." The ship vibrated, a slow pulse rippling through the deck. The lights dimmed again. Shadows stretched across the walls, not long and tall, flat and upright like silhouettes torn off the crew and pinned into the air. Jalen stepped back. One of the shadows turned its head toward him. It had no features, no eyes, no mouth, but he felt its attention like a hand on his spine. A flood of images crashed into his mind, not words, not thoughts, pictures. A gray world with no stars, creatures shaped like thin waves of darkness drifting across surface fields, a people who lived through vibration, through rhythm, through the silence between pulses. Then came noise, starships exploding near their region, experimental drives ripping holes in the quiet layers of space, a dying chorus of shadow beings writhing under waves of violent sound. The survivors folded themselves into a sphere of stillness, a silent orb drifting through space in search of quiet ground. They found the black ridge on the moon below, a place where old stone hummed with a soft, deep pulse, perfect shelter until Arclight intruded with its engine roar and metal clatter. To the beings in the orb, Arclight was a weapon of unending noise. If they did not stop it, the noise would destroy them. Rhea dropped to her knees, clutching her head. More visions hit her. The orb planned to silence the ship completely, slow every sound, every motion, every heartbeat, until the entire crew froze in painless stillness. Then the ship would drift silently forever. Perfect sanctuary for the shadow beings, perfect tomb for the crew. Jalen grabbed Rhea and pulled her away as more shadows rose, hundreds now, each turning in slow, smooth arcs toward them. The shadows blocked the main hall. They did not attack, they simply waited for the silence to tighten around the crew. Breathing grew harder. Jalen felt each inhale drag like thick liquid. He pushed Rhea toward the emergency ladder. The shadows followed, not walking, sliding, always close, never touching. They reached the engine deck. The captain and 3 crew were already there, struggling with emergency power. The reactor lights pulsed weakly. Jump fuel was low, not enough for a long escape, enough for one wild, uncontrolled jump into deep space. The shadows reached the doorway, dozens filling the frame. The orb behind them pulsed, a perfect black sphere waiting to close the trap. Jalen saw only one option: force the jump, drag the orb with them, throw it into a place where no sound could reach, no stars, no traffic, no life. He linked the orb to the jump field. The reactor groaned, the deck lurched, the shadows' movements slowed like thick syrup. One lifted an arm toward him, or tried to. Its shape warped as time bent around them. The captain shouted to fire the jump. The sound came late, a full second after his mouth moved. Jalen slammed the control. The engine deck exploded with white light. The crew felt themselves stretch, twist, flatten, then reassemble in a cold region of space where no starlight reached. Silence returned, but a natural silence, not the crushing one. The orb floated outside the viewport, far, small, powerless, cut off from any vibration worth absorbing. The shadows inside Arclight dissolved into dust. They drifted away like smoke pulled by an invisible breeze, then vanished. Jalen touched his own shadow. It matched perfectly, no lag, no distortion. Rhea stood beside him, breathing hard. "We exiled them," she said. "Not killed, not saved, just removed." Jalen stared at the floating orb in the empty void for a moment. He felt a faint pulse, sadness, not hatred, a quiet plea for safe worlds that no longer existed. Arclight repaired its systems and prepared a long, slow crawl back toward known space. Behind them, the orb drifted alone through dark that stretched for millions of years in every direction. Sometimes Jalen thought he heard faint echoes in the hull, not real memories, whispers of beings made of shadow and silence. He whispered into the void, "Stay quiet, stay far, let the universe breathe." And as Arclight turned away, its engines lit a path of noise across the darkness, a ribbon of sound, a reminder that life moves and speaks and sings. Far behind them, the silent orb remained still, a lonely world of shadows, watching, waiting, drifting forever where no sound could follow.